I'm not sorry for ruining their adoption, because their little girl deserved better than what they had planned for her. I work at a coffee shop near the County Adoption Services building. We get a lot of social workers and prospective parents coming through. You start recognizing faces after a while. This couple, the Hendersons, came in every Tuesday morning for 3 months straight. Always ordered the same thing. Black coffee for him, vanilla latte for her. They'd sit at the corner table with folders and papers spread everywhere. At first, I thought they seemed nice enough. She'd smile at me when ordering. He'd leave decent tips, but something felt off. I couldn't put my finger on it until I overheard them talking one morning. I was wiping down the table next to theirs when Mrs. Henderson said, "Once the adoption goes through, we'll finally get access to the trust fund. 18 years is a long time, but it'll be worth it." Mr. Henderson laughed. "Plus the monthly stipend from the state for special needs kids. We just need to make sure they classify her properly." I froze. The girl they were adopting wasn't special needs. I'd seen her photo on their folder the week before when Mrs. Henderson left it on the counter. Just a regular 7-year-old kid with dark hair and a gap-toothed smile. "What about when she gets older and starts asking questions?" Mrs. Henderson whispered. "We'll cross that bridge later. Right now, we just need to pass the home visits." I kept wiping the same spot on the table for way too long. They didn't even notice me standing there. The next Tuesday, they brought someone new. An older woman who turned out to be their social worker, Janet. I recognized her because she came in here sometimes for afternoon coffee. She was going over their home study results. "Everything looks perfect," Janet said, flipping through papers. "The home visit went well. References checked out. You should get approval by next month." Mrs. Henderson beamed. "We're just so excited to give Mia a loving home." Mia, that was her name. After they left, I couldn't stop thinking about it. That night, I did something I probably shouldn't have. I looked up the Hendersons online, found out that Mrs. Henderson's sister had died 2 years ago, killed in a car accident along with her husband. They'd left behind one daughter, Mia, and apparently a massive trust fund that could only be accessed by her legal guardian. The Hendersons weren't even Mia's closest relatives. There was a grandmother still alive, plus an aunt on the father's side, but somehow they'd positioned themselves as the best option. I spent a week trying to figure out what to do. Then Janet came in for her usual afternoon coffee. I made her drink and wrote on her cup sleeve, "Check Henderson financials. Ask about sister's trust fund." She looked at the cup, then at me. I just shrugged and walked away. 2 weeks later, the Hendersons didn't come in on Tuesday, or the next Tuesday, or the one after that. Janet came in, though. She ordered her coffee, and while I was making it, she said quietly, "That tip you gave me." We dug deeper, found some things that didn't add up. The adoption's been denied. "What about Mia?" I asked. "Going to live with her grandmother upstate. The woman's been trying to get custody for months but kept getting blocked by paperwork issues. Funny how those issues suddenly got resolved." She left a $20 tip that day. A month later, I saw Mrs. Henderson walk past the shop window. She looked right at me. Her face went red and she flipped me off before storming away. I went back to making lattes. Last week, a woman came in I'd never seen before. Older lady, maybe 60s. She ordered tea and asked if I was the one who worked Tuesday mornings. I said yes. She nodded, said her granddaughter loved her new school upstate, and asked if I'd heard about the Hendersons lately. "Just that the adoption fell through?" I said. She shook her head slowly. "It didn't fall through because of money. The real reason got buried in the paperwork." She pulled out a document from her bag. It was a police report from 6 years ago. Mr. Henderson's name was all over it. They had another foster kid before, an 8-year-old boy. Her voice cracked. He died in their care and they ruled it an accident, but the boy's biological aunt never believed it. I set down the cup I was holding. My hands had started shaking. "What happened to him?" The woman, Mia's grandmother, folded the paper carefully and put it back in her bag. She took a long breath before answering. "His name was Oliver. Oliver Pratt. He was in the system for 2 years before the Hendersons took him in. According to the official report, he fell down the basement stairs, hit his head. The Hendersons called 911, but by the time paramedics arrived, he was already gone." I leaned against the counter. The espresso machine hissed behind me, but I barely heard it. How does something like that just get buried? "Money helps," she said flatly. "And connections." Gerald Henderson's cousin worked in the county prosecutor's office back then. Different county than this one, which is probably why they thought they could try again here. She stirred her tea even though she hadn't added anything to it, just stirring and stirring. Oliver's aunt, woman named Patrice Bellamy, she tried for years to get someone to listen. Filed complaints, wrote letters, nothing ever stuck. The Hendersons moved 3 times in 6 years, different counties each time. She lost track of them until about 8 months ago. How did she find them again? Facebook of all things. Diane Henderson posted something in a local moms group asking about adoption resources. Patrice has alerts set up for their names. When she saw they were trying to adopt again, she nearly had a heart attack. I thought about all those Tuesday mornings. The vanilla lattes, the folders spread across the table, the way Mrs. Henderson smiled at me like butter wouldn't melt. She contacted everyone she could think of, the grandmother continued. Social services, the police, the adoption agency. Most of them brushed her off, said the case was closed years ago, said she was just a grieving relative who couldn't accept what happened. But you believed her. I didn't know her from Adam until 3 weeks ago. But when my lawyer started digging into why my custody paperwork kept getting delayed, we found some interesting things. The Hendersons had hired someone to file objections on my behalf, forged my signature on documents saying I wasn't fit to care for Mia. My stomach dropped. They forged your signature? 3 times. Once claiming I had a criminal record, once saying I'd voluntarily surrendered custody, once stating I'd failed a home inspection that never happened. She finally took a sip of her tea. Her hands were steady now. Mine weren't. When your note to Janet got the ball rolling, it wasn't just about the money. The agency started cross-referencing everything. That's when Patrice's old complaints finally got pulled up. That's when someone actually read them. I didn't know what to say. I thought I was exposing a financial scheme. Turns out I'd stumbled into something much darker. Where are the Hendersons now? I asked. Gerald's been questioned by police twice. No charges yet, but Patrice finally got a detective to reopen the case. They're looking at everything again. The original autopsy report, the 911 call, the Hendersons' finances from that period. She finished her tea and reached for her purse. I came here to say thank you, but I also came to warn you. Warn me? Diane Henderson knows you're the one who started this. I don't know how she found out, but she knows. She walked past your window last month for a reason. She wanted you to see her. I remembered that moment, her face going red, the middle finger, the way she'd stormed off. What should I do? Be careful. Document everything. If anything strange happens, if anyone follows you, if you get any threatening messages, you call the police immediately. And you call me. She slid a business card across the counter. Her name was Eleanor Vance. There was a phone number and an address in a town called Millbrook, about 2 hours north. Mia asks about the coffee shop lady sometimes, she said with a small smile. I told her maybe someday she can meet you properly, when all this is over. After she left, I stood behind the counter for a long time. The afternoon rush came and went. I made drinks on autopilot, smiled at customers, wiped tables, normal stuff, but nothing felt normal anymore. Update 1. 3 weeks after Eleanor Vance walked into my coffee shop, I got the first letter. No return address. My name handwritten on the envelope in careful, precise letters. I found it in my mailbox on a Tuesday, which felt deliberate. Inside was a single sheet of paper with a typed message. Curiosity killed the cat. Mind your own business or you'll regret it. That's it. Nothing else. No signature. I took a photo of it and texted it to Eleanor. She called me within 5 minutes. Don't touch it anymore. Put it in a plastic bag. I'm calling Detective Moreau. Detective Alain Moreau was the one who'd reopened Oliver's case. Eleanor had mentioned him during her visit, but I hadn't met him yet. 2 days later, he showed up at the coffee shop during my shift. Tall guy, maybe early 50s, with gray at his temples and the kind of tired eyes that come from seeing too much. He ordered a black coffee and waited until there was a lull in customers. Miss Torrance? He asked, though he clearly already knew who I was. That's me. I'm Detective Moreau. Eleanor Vance told you about me. I nodded and handed him his coffee. Is there somewhere we can talk privately? My manager, Gabe, was in the back doing inventory. I asked him to cover the counter for 10 minutes and led the detective to the small break room behind the kitchen. I need to ask you some questions about the Hendersons, he said, settling into one of the plastic chairs. And I need you to tell me exactly what you heard that day at the coffee shop. Word for word, if you can remember. I told him everything. The conversation about the trust fund, the comment about the special needs stipend, the way they talked about Mia like she was an investment, not a child. He took notes the whole time. Did they ever say anything else suspicious? Anything at all, even if it seemed minor? I thought back to those Tuesday mornings, 3 months of watching them from behind the counter. There was one thing, I said slowly. About a month before I wrote that note to Janet, Mrs. Henderson was on her phone while her husband was in the bathroom. I heard her say something like, "We'll handle her the same way we handled the last one. She just needs firm boundaries." Detective Moreau stopped writing. The same way we handled the last one? I didn't think much of it at the time. I figured maybe they'd fostered another kid before or something. But now it sounds different. Yeah. He closed his notebook and looked at me for a long moment. Miss Torrance, I'm going to be straight with you. This case is complicated. Oliver Pratt died 6 years ago. The original investigation was botched, possibly intentionally. We're building something, but it's slow going. The Hendersons have resources and connections. They're not going to go down easy. What about the letter I got? We can't prove they sent it. No fingerprints except yours. The postmark was from a town 50 miles from here. Could be them. Could be someone they hired. Could be some random person who heard about the case and decided to play vigilante. So there's nothing you can do? I didn't say that. I said we can't prove it was them, but we're watching. And I'd recommend you be careful. Vary your routine. Don't walk to your car alone after dark. If you see anything suspicious, call me directly. He gave me his card. I added it to the one Eleanor had given me. My collection of emergency contacts was growing. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Oliver Pratt, 8 years old, in the system for 2 years, finally placed with what looked like a loving family, then dead at the bottom of a basement staircase. So I got up at 2 a.m. and did something I probably shouldn't have. I searched for Patrice Bellamy, Oliver's aunt. It wasn't hard to find her. She had a Facebook page with public posts going back years. Most of them were about Oliver, photos from when he was alive, updates about her fight to get justice, anniversary posts on the day he died. I scrolled through 6 years of grief compressed into a timeline. There was a post from 8 months ago that caught my eye, the one where she discovered the Hendersons were trying to adopt again. I can't believe they're doing this again. I can't believe anyone is letting them. If you have any information about Gerald and Diane Henderson or their adoption application, please contact me. This can't happen again, not again. Below it were hundreds of comments, some supportive, some calling her crazy, some saying she needed to move on. She'd responded to almost all of them, patient and persistent, explaining over and over what had happened to Oliver and why she believed it wasn't an accident. I found myself clicking on the message button. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. What was I going to say? Hi, I'm the barista who helped stop the adoption. I'm scared now and I don't know what to do. I closed the laptop without sending anything. The next morning at work, I noticed a car parked across the street from the coffee shop. Dark blue sedan, tinted windows. I couldn't see who was inside. It was there when I arrived at 6 a.m. Still there when I took my lunch break at noon. Still there when I left at 3 p.m. I wrote down the license plate number and texted it to Detective Moreau. His response came an hour later. Registered to a rental company, looking into it. Stay alert. Stay alert. Like that was something I could turn off at this point. The car was gone the next day, but then I started noticing other things. A woman I'd never seen before who came in 3 days in a row, ordered water, sat for an hour, and left without drinking it. A man who stood outside smoking cigarettes for 20 minutes while staring at the shop window. My mail arriving opened and poorly resealed. Maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe these were all coincidences. But 3 weeks ago, I was just a barista who heard something she wasn't supposed to hear, and now I was looking over my shoulder every time I walked to my car. I called Eleanor to give her an update. She listened to everything, then told me something that made my blood run cold. The Hendersons' lawyer filed a harassment complaint against Patrice yesterday. They're claiming she's been stalking them, making their lives impossible. They're seeking a restraining order. Can they do that? They can try. It's a strategy. Make enough noise about being victims and maybe people stop looking at them as perpetrators. That's disgusting. That's how people like them operate. They've had 6 years to practice. I asked her how Mia was doing. Eleanor's voice softened. She's okay. Still having nightmares sometimes. She doesn't fully understand what almost happened. She just knows she was supposed to go live with some people and now she's living with me instead. Does she remember the Hendersons? She met them twice. Supervised visits before the adoption was supposed to finalize. She told me Mrs. Henderson smelled like vanilla and Mr. Henderson had cold hands. Cold hands. I thought about him handing me his credit card across the counter. The brief touch of his fingers. She's safe now, I said, more to convince myself than anything. She is. Because of you. That should have made me feel better. It didn't. 2 days later, I met Patrice Bellamy. She came into the coffee shop on a Thursday afternoon. I recognized her from her Facebook photos, though she looked older in person. Late 40s, with short gray hair and the kind of deep exhaustion that doesn't come from lack of sleep. She ordered a chamomile tea and asked if I was Corinne Torrance. How did you know my name? Eleanor told me. She said you might be able to help. I made her tea and handed it to her carefully. Help with what? The detective thinks he can reopen Oliver's case, but he needs more. He needs people who saw things, heard things, people who can testify about who the Hendersons really are. I already told him everything I know. I know, but there might be more. There's always more with people like them. She pulled out a folder from her bag. Inside were photographs, documents, newspaper clippings, 6 years of evidence she'd collected on her own. Oliver was my sister's son, she said, spreading the papers across the table. My sister died of cancer when he was 5. His father was never in the picture. So he went into the system and I tried to get custody. But I was single, working 2 jobs, living in a 1-bedroom apartment. They said I wasn't a suitable placement. She pointed to a photo of a smiling little boy with curly hair and a gap between his front teeth. He was with the Hendersons for 8 months before he died. In the beginning, they sent updates, photos, said he was adjusting well. Then the updates stopped. When I asked why, they said he was going through a difficult phase and too much contact with biological family was making it worse. Did you believe them? No, but what could I do? I wasn't his legal guardian. I had no rights. She showed me the autopsy report. I didn't understand most of the medical terminology, but she translated. Blunt force trauma to the head, consistent with a fall. But here, she pointed to a section near the bottom. There were also bruises on his arms. Old bruises. Different stages of healing. They were hurting him. The original investigator said the bruises could have been from normal childhood play. Boys are rough, he said. They fall down, they bump into things. Her voice was flat, rehearsed, like she'd told this story so many times it had worn grooves in her throat. The 911 call is what gets me, she continued. Diane Henderson made the call. She was calm, eerily calm. Said Oliver fell down the stairs and wasn't breathing. No screaming, no panic, no sounds of someone giving CPR in the background. Maybe she was in shock. Maybe. Or maybe she knew it was already too late because she knew exactly what had happened. I looked at the photo of Oliver again. 7 years old in the picture. He would have been 14 now if he'd lived. Why are you showing me all this? Because I need you to understand what we're dealing with. The Hendersons aren't just greedy people who wanted access to a trust fund. They're dangerous. And now that their plans have been disrupted twice, they're going to be desperate. Desperate people make mistakes, I said. Sometimes. Sometimes they also make people disappear. The weight of her words settled over me like a wet blanket. I'm not trying to scare you, she said. Well, maybe I am a little. You should be scared. I've been scared for 6 years, but I'm also trying to ask for your help. What kind of help? The detective needs witnesses who can establish a pattern of behavior. You heard them talking about Mia, about the trust fund, about manipulating the system. That's evidence of intent. It shows this wasn't a one-time thing. It shows they've been doing this deliberately, targeting vulnerable children for financial gain. And you think that'll be enough to connect them to what happened to Oliver? I think it's a piece of the puzzle. One of many pieces. But every piece matters. I thought about the letter I'd received, the car watching the shop, the feeling of being followed. I'll do whatever I can, I said finally. But I need to know something first. That night Oliver died, where were the Hendersons supposed to be? Patrice's expression shifted. Surprised, maybe, that I'd asked. They were home, both of them. At least that's what they told police. Did anyone verify that? No. Why? I pulled out my phone and showed her the notes I'd been keeping. Times and dates when I'd observed the Hendersons at the coffee shop. Details I'd noticed about their behavior. Comments I'd overheard. I'm not a detective, I said. But I've been watching people for 4 years from behind this counter. You learn things, you notice patterns. Patrice was staring at my notes like I'd handed her a winning lottery ticket. This is exactly what we need. She breathed. Can you give this to Detective Moreau? I already gave him most of it, but there's more. Things I've remembered since then. Things that didn't seem important at the time. Everything is important, she said. Everything. We talked for another hour. She told me about Oliver's favorite dinosaur, Triceratops. His favorite food? Chicken nuggets with honey mustard. The way he laughed at knock-knock jokes, even when he didn't understand the punchline. By the time she left, I felt like I knew him. This little boy I'd never met who'd been dead for 6 years. That night, I did something I'd been avoiding. I messaged Patrice on Facebook. Thank you for coming to see me today. I want to help however I can. Oliver deserved better. So did Mia. And so does every other kid these people might have targeted. She responded within minutes. Thank you for listening. Most people don't. Most people tell me to move on, to accept what happened. But accepting means letting them get away with it. I'll never do that. Neither will I typed back. And I meant it. Update 2. The restraining order against Patrice was denied. Eleanor called me with the news on a rainy Wednesday morning. The judge had reviewed the Hendersons' complaint and found it without merit. Patrice hadn't been stalking anyone. She'd been advocating for justice, though. There's a difference. It felt like a small victory in what was shaping up to be a very long war. Detective Moreau came by the coffee shop again a few days later. This time he brought a colleague, a woman named Detective Simone Parrish, who specialized in cold cases. They asked me to go over everything again. Every conversation I'd overheard, every detail I could remember. They recorded the whole thing on a little digital device no bigger than my thumb. We found 2 other families, Detective Parrish said when we were finished. 2 other cases where children in foster care ended up with medical emergencies while placed with the Hendersons. I felt my stomach drop. Medical emergencies? One was a 5-year-old girl who fell out of a 2nd-story window. She survived but has permanent brain damage. Lives in a care facility now, CMI. The other was a 3-year-old boy who nearly drowned in the bathtub. He survived too, but barely. And the Hendersons were never charged? Both were ruled accidents. Both investigations were minimal. Both cases were eventually closed. I thought about what the grandmother had told me. About Gerald Henderson's cousin in the prosecutor's office. About connections and money and people who know how to work the system. How did they keep getting approved for foster care? I asked. Detective Moreau shook his head. Different counties, different agencies. Paperwork that doesn't get properly transferred. Families that move around enough, the system loses track. That's insane. That's the system. They told me the investigation was progressing, but slowly. Building a case like this takes time, especially when the defendants have money and lawyers and 6 years of practice covering their tracks. I asked what I could do in the meantime. Be patient, Detective Parrish said. And be careful. We're watching the Hendersons, but we can't watch them all the time. If they decide to make a move against you, we might not be able to stop it. Great. More reassurance. After they left, I called in sick for the rest of my shift. I couldn't stand behind that counter anymore, smiling at customers, making drinks like everything was normal. Nothing was normal. I went home and locked my door and sat on my couch in the dark until my roommate came home and asked why I was being weird. Her name was Delia. We'd lived together for 2 years. She knew something was going on with me, but I hadn't told her the details. I didn't want to drag her into it. You've been jumpy for weeks, she said, dropping onto the couch beside me. You check the locks like 3 times before bed. You basically run to your car after work. What's going on, Corinne? I told her. All of it. From the first conversation I overheard to the letter in my mailbox to the detectives who'd just left. By the time I finished, her face was pale. This is messed up, she said quietly. I know. You basically stopped a child from being adopted by murderers. Alleged murderers. Technically. Whatever. You're a hero. I don't feel like a hero. I feel like someone who stuck her nose where it didn't belong and now can't unstick it. Delia was quiet for a moment. Then she said something I wasn't expecting. My cousin works for the local news. That station, Channel 7. She does investigative pieces sometimes. Maybe she'd be interested in this story. I hadn't considered going to the media. Detective Moreau had never mentioned it as an option. But the more I thought about it, the more sense it made. The Hendersons had survived this long by staying in the shadows, by moving around, by keeping their crimes quiet and contained. What if they couldn't hide anymore? Give me her number, I said. Delia's cousin was named Tamara Oyalaran. She was 32, Nigerian-American, with box braids down to her waist and the kind of energy that made you tired just watching her. We met at a diner far from the coffee shop, just in case someone was watching. I told her everything I'd told the detectives. She recorded it on her phone with my permission. This is a big story, she said when I finished. Multi-state investigation, possible serial abusers working the foster system, a dead child, and 2 more with permanent injuries. Why hasn't anyone covered this before? Because the Hendersons are good at keeping things quiet, and because Oliver's aunt was dismissed as a grieving relative who couldn't let go. Tamara nodded slowly. I've seen that before. Women especially. When we make noise about injustice, we get labeled as hysterical, obsessive, crazy. Patrice isn't crazy, she's right. I believe you. But believing and proving are different things. I need to do my own research before I can pitch this to my editor. How long will that take? Give me 2 weeks. I'll pull court records, foster care reports, anything I can get through public records requests. If the story is as big as you're saying, it'll be worth the wait. 2 weeks. It felt like forever. But it was also faster than the police were moving. We shook hands and went our separate ways. I drove home the long way, checking my rearview mirror every few minutes. No one was following me. At least no one I could see. The Hendersons made their move 6 days later. I was closing up the coffee shop alone. Gabe had left early for a dentist appointment. The last customer walked out at 8 p.m., and I locked the door behind him. I was wiping down the espresso machine when I heard the back door open. We never use the back door. It leads to an alley where we keep the dumpsters. It's supposed to be locked from the inside, but someone was opening it. I grabbed the first thing I could find, a metal milk frothing pitcher, and moved toward the kitchen. Gerald Henderson stepped through the door. He looked different than he had during all those Tuesday mornings. Harder, older. His eyes were flat and dead, like someone had scooped out whatever soul was left. Miss Torrance, he said, we need to talk. I didn't say anything, just stood there holding my ridiculous weapon, heart hammering in my chest. You've caused a lot of problems for my family, he continued, moving closer. A lot of expense, a lot of embarrassment. I want to know what it would take to make you stop. Make me stop what? Talking to detectives, talking to journalists, digging into things that don't concern you. He knew about Tamara. How did he know about Tamara? I don't know what you're talking about, I said. Don't play stupid, it doesn't suit you. He was close enough now that I could smell his cologne. Something expensive, something wrong. I know you've been meeting with that reporter. I know you've been giving statements to the police. I know you're the reason our adoption fell through and the reason a dead case is suddenly being reopened. Good, I heard myself say. I hope it destroys you. Something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, maybe, or anger. You don't understand what you're dealing with, he said. This isn't some Lifetime movie where the brave little barista brings down the bad guys. This is real life. In real life, people who get in the way of things get hurt. Like Oliver? He didn't react. Not a flinch, not a twitch. Nothing. I don't know anyone named Oliver. You're lying. Prove it. We stood there, barely 3 feet apart. I could see the pores on his nose, the gray hairs in his eyebrows, the slight tremor in his jaw. He was afraid. Under all that cold confidence, he was afraid. Stay out of this, he said. Last warning. Things are going to get very uncomfortable for you if you don't. He turned and walked back toward the door. I already told them everything, I called after him. Even if you make me disappear, they'll know it was you. He paused at the threshold, looked back at me over his shoulder. Who said anything about disappearing? There are other ways to ruin a life. Then he was gone. I stood there for a long time after he left. The metal pitcher shook in my hand. Eventually, I put it down and called Detective Moreau. He answered on the second ring. He was here, I said. Gerald Henderson. He came into the shop and threatened me. Are you safe right now? I think so. He left. Don't leave. Don't open any doors. I'm sending a car. 20 minutes later, 2 uniformed officers arrived. They searched the entire building, checked the back door, the lock had been picked, and took my statement. Detective Moreau showed up an hour after that. He looked at me with something like guilt. I'm sorry, he said. We should have anticipated this. What happens now? Now we know he's rattled. Rattled people make mistakes. We're going to push harder. And what do? You stay somewhere safe, not your apartment. Somewhere they don't know about. I thought about Delia, about her family, about anyone else I might be putting in danger just by existing. I don't have anywhere to go. Yes, you do, came a voice from the doorway. Eleanor Vance stood there, wrapped in a heavy coat against the October chill. She looked at me the way my grandmother used to look at me when I was little and scared of thunderstorms. You'll stay with us, she said. Upstate, with Mia. I started to protest, said I didn't want to impose, said I had work, said a dozen things that didn't matter. Eleanor just shook her head. You protected my granddaughter without ever meeting her, without knowing her name, without getting anything in return. The least I can do is protect you now. And that's how I ended up leaving my life behind and driving 2 hours north to a small town called Millbrook. Update 3. Millbrook was the kind of town where everyone knew everyone and strangers stuck out like sore thumbs. Population maybe 5,000. One main street with a grocery store, a hardware store, a bar, and a church. Eleanor's house sat on 2 acres at the edge of town, surrounded by maple trees that were just starting to turn red and gold. It was a farmhouse, old but well-maintained, with a wraparound porch and a tire swing in the front yard. Mia was waiting on that porch when we pulled up. She was smaller than I expected. 7 years old, but she looked younger, thin and pale, with the same dark hair from the photo I'd seen on the Hendersons folder. Her eyes were too big for her face, the kind of eyes that had seen too much too soon. Are you the coffee lady? She asked as I got out of the car. I guess I am, I said. Grandma says you helped me. She says you're brave. I didn't feel brave. I felt exhausted and scared and completely out of my depth. Your grandma's the brave one, I said. She fought really hard to bring you here. Mia considered this with the seriousness only children can muster. Then she nodded once decisively and held out her hand. Want to see my room? I have glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling. I took her hand and let her lead me inside. Eleanor had set me up in a guest room on the 2nd floor. It was small but comfortable, with a quilt on the bed that looked handmade and a window overlooking the backyard. You'll be safe here, Eleanor said. The nearest neighbor is half a mile away and they mind their own business. I've got a security system and 2 dogs who bark at anything that moves. I could hear the dogs in question downstairs. Big retrievers named Bean and Sprocket who had immediately tried to drown me in slobber. How long do you think this will take? I asked. The investigation, I mean. As long as it takes. These things don't move fast. What about my job? My apartment? Your job will wait. Your apartment will wait. None of that matters if you're not alive to enjoy it. She said it so matter-of-factly that it took me a moment to process. You really think they'd kill me? I think they've done it before. I think they're capable of it again. And I think they're desperate enough now to try. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in the unfamiliar bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the wind in the maple trees. Every creak of the old house made me jump. Around midnight, I heard a soft knock on my door. Come in, I said, sitting up. The door opened and Mia slipped inside, clutching a stuffed elephant against her chest. Can't sleep, she whispered. Me neither. She padded over to the bed and climbed up beside me, settling against the pillows like she belonged there. Do you have bad dreams? She asked sometimes. Do you? Yeah, about the people who are going to take me. I felt my heart clench. What do you dream about them? The lady smiled a lot, but her eyes didn't smile, and the man had cold hands. I didn't like when he touched my shoulder. You never have to see them again, I said. Your grandma made sure of that. And you, Mia said. Grandma says you stopped them first. I just told someone what I heard, that's all. That's a lot. We sat there in the darkness, this little girl and I, 2 strangers bound together by circumstances neither of us had chosen. My mom and dad are in heaven, Mia said quietly. Grandma says they're watching over me. I'm sure they are. Sometimes I talk to them. I tell them about my day, about school, about Grandma's cooking. What do you tell them about me? Mia thought about it. I told them there's a coffee lady staying with us. I told them she looks tired. I laughed, which surprised both of us. I am tired, I admitted. Really tired. You can sleep now, Mia said like it was the simplest thing in the world. I'll keep watch. You don't have to do that. I want to. Someone kept watch for me. Now I can keep watch for you. She curled up at the foot of the bed, the stuffed elephant tucked under her chin. Within minutes, her breathing had evened out. I watched her sleep and thought about Oliver Pratt, about the 2 other children who'd been hurt, about all the kids out there who might fall through the cracks of a broken system into the hands of people like the Hendersons. Eventually, somehow, I slept too. The next 2 weeks passed in a strange blur. I helped Eleanor around the house. I walked Mia to the bus stop every morning and met her there every afternoon. I learned to bake bread and split firewood and identify the calls of different birds. I also gave 3 more statements to Detective Moreau over video call. And I had 4 more conversations with Tamara, who was building her story piece by piece. It's almost ready, she told me during our last call. I've verified everything. The foster records, the medical reports, the pattern across 3 counties. My editor's giving me the green light. When does it air? Next Friday, primetime. I felt something shift in my chest. Hope, maybe? Or fear. It was hard to tell the difference anymore. The night before the story was scheduled to air, Eleanor got a phone call that changed everything. I was in the kitchen helping Mia with her homework when I heard Eleanor answer in the other room. Her voice went from normal to tense in seconds. When? Are you sure? Yes, I understand. Thank you for letting me know. She came into the kitchen looking like she'd seen a ghost. What happened? I asked. Diane Henderson is dead. The words didn't make sense at first. I just stared at her. How? Car accident. Single vehicle. She lost control on a mountain road last night and went over the edge. That's impossible. She can't just... There's more. Eleanor sat down heavily. Gerald Henderson is missing. His lawyer reported him gone this morning. No one knows where he is. The police found Gerald Henderson 2 days later. He'd taken a bus to a town in rural Montana, rented a cabin under a fake name, and apparently planned to wait out the storm. But someone recognized him from the news coverage that had started airing in bits and pieces before Tamara's full story dropped. He was arrested without incident. No dramatic standoff, no chase. Just a tired, broken man in handcuffs being led into the back of a patrol car. I watched the footage on Eleanor's television, Mia asleep on the couch beside me. It's over, Eleanor said. Is it? The hard part, anyway. The rest is just paperwork and lawyers. I wasn't so sure. The Hendersons had connections, money, 6 years of practice manipulating the system. But then Tamara's story aired and everything changed. The piece was 17 minutes long. It started with Oliver's photo, that smiling little boy with curly hair and a gap in his teeth. It showed Patrice telling her story, finally, to a camera. It showed the medical records of the 2 other children. It showed my testimony, recorded in Eleanor's kitchen, explaining what I'd heard at the coffee shop. It showed the pattern. 3 counties, 4 children, 1 family. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Within 24 hours, the story had been picked up by national outlets. Within 48, there were calls for investigations into how the foster system had allowed this to happen. Within 72, 3 more families had come forward with stories about the Hendersons. Gerald Henderson was formally charged with second-degree murder in Oliver's death. Additional charges followed for the other children. His lawyers tried to argue he was mentally unfit to stand trial, but the judge wasn't buying it. The trial lasted 3 weeks. I testified twice. So did Patrice. So did Eleanor and Janet, the social worker, and dozens of others who had encountered the Hendersons over the years. The verdict came on a Thursday afternoon. Guilty on all counts. Gerald Henderson was sentenced to 45 years. He'd die in prison. I was in the courtroom when the sentence was read. So was Patrice. When the judge finished speaking, she turned to me with tears streaming down her face and pulled me into a hug. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for believing me." I didn't know what to say, so I just hugged her back. After the trial, I went back to Millbrook one last time. Mia was in the front yard when I pulled up, higher on the tire swing than Eleanor probably would have liked. "You came back," she shouted, jumping off and running toward me. "Just for a visit," I said. "I have to go back to my real life soon." "But this is your real life too," she said like it was obvious. "You're part of our family now." I looked at Eleanor, who was watching from the porch with a small smile. "She's not wrong," Eleanor said. "You'll always have a place here, no matter what." I stayed for dinner. Mia showed me her latest school project, a diorama of the solar system with a lopsided Saturn. Eleanor made her famous pot roast. Bean and Sprocket fought over scraps under the table. After Mia went to bed, Eleanor and I sat on the porch watching the stars. "What will you do now?" she asked. "Go back to work, I guess. Try to remember what normal feels like. Normal is overrated. Maybe. But I miss making coffee for people who just want a caffeine fix. No drama, no life or death stakes. Just espresso and small talk." Eleanor laughed. "That does sound nice." We sat in comfortable silence for a while. "You know," I said eventually, "I've been thinking about what Mia said. About being part of your family. And I don't really have a family. My parents died when I was in college, no siblings. I've just been floating for years. You don't have to float anymore, Eleanor said simply. I didn't know how to respond to that, so I just nodded and watched the stars. I went back to the coffee shop the following Monday. Gabe was thrilled to see me. The customers who knew me were full of questions. The ones who didn't know me were just there for their lattes. It felt good, normal, safe, but something had changed. I couldn't unknow what I knew now. Couldn't unsee the darkness that lived in ordinary-looking people. I started paying more attention to the social workers who came in, started listening more carefully to conversations at nearby tables, started keeping a notebook under the counter where I wrote down things that seemed off. Most of it was nothing. Paranoia left over from the Henderson case. But sometimes it wasn't nothing. 3 months after the trial ended, I overheard a man talking on his phone about a kid he was fostering. She's more trouble than she's worth, he said. But the check comes every month, so what can you do? I wrote down his description, made a note of the time. That afternoon, Janet came in for her usual coffee. Hey, I said quietly, sliding a napkin across the counter. I heard something you might want to look into. She looked at the napkin, then at me. Then she nodded once and put it in her pocket. Some patterns are worth interrupting, even if no one asks you to. Last week, I got a letter in the mail. No return address. My heart stopped for a second before I opened it. Inside was a drawing. A purple crayon sun, a green crayon house, 2 stick figures holding hands. On the back, in careful first-grader handwriting, "Thank you for saving me. Love, Mia." I put it on my refrigerator, right at eye level.